The grand assembly chamber stretched 300 meters across, with crystalline walls that reflected light from 47 different home worlds. Minho Kim stood at the center platform, his plain black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien delegates surrounding him. He had walked this floor for 5 years as Earth's ambassador, and in that time he had filed 237 formal complaints. Not one had been resolved in humanity's favor. Today would be his last visit. Minho placed a small data crystal on the presentation pedestal. The holographic display activated, filling the air with scrolling text and video evidence. 23 years of documented crimes against humanity. Colony ships turned away from empty, habitable worlds because the Velcrin claimed ancient migration rights that didn't exist. Human merchants charged tariffs 3 times higher than any other species with no legal justification. Children born to human parents in mixed settlements denied basic citizenship. Forced to live as stateless refugees in their own neighborhoods, the evidence was undeniable. Minho had spent years collecting it, verifying every detail, ensuring that no council member could claim ignorance or misunderstanding. He had followed every protocol, used every proper channel, exhausted every diplomatic option available under galactic law. The Velcrin Primarch, a massive creature with 6 arms and crystalline skin, made a sound that the translation device rendered as laughter. Ambassador Kim brings us another collection of complaints. How tiresome this has become. Other delegates joined in. The Threxian High Speaker, species had ruled 3 systems before humanity even discovered fire, waved a dismissive tentacle. Perhaps the humans should focus less on filing protests and more on earning their place in civilized society. You achieved faster-than-light travel only 40 years ago. You are children playing at the adults' table. Minho waited for the laughter to die down. He had expected this reaction. He had, in fact, counted on it. The Terran Federation has reviewed the Council's response to our grievances, Minho said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's audio system. We have concluded that diplomatic resolution is no longer possible. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. The laughter stopped. Furthermore, Minho continued, all treaties between Earth and Council members are hereby considered void due to material breach by the other parties. All human diplomats will be recalled within 48 hours. All Council diplomatic staff currently on Earth or human colonies have 72 hours to depart our territory. The Velcrin Primarch leaned forward. You cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization, Ambassador. You are a junior species. You need the Council more than the Council needs you. Minho picked up the data crystal, slipping it into his pocket. We needed the Council to honor its treaties. You failed to do so for 23 years. We no longer need anything from you. This is unacceptable, the Threxian High Speaker declared. You demand nothing, Minho interrupted, his tone still perfectly calm. Diplomacy is over. The Terran Federation will respond to all future provocations as we see fit. Under the rules of engagement established by this very Council, I suggest you review those rules carefully. You wrote them? We studied them. Minho turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, chaos erupted as delegates shouted questions and threats. He ignored them all. His job was done. What came next was someone else's responsibility. 3 billion kilometers away, Captain Hannah Park stood on the bridge of the Terran destroyer Retribution. Reading the encrypted message that had just arrived through quantum communication, her crew watched her face, trying to guess the content. Hannah had served in the Terran Navy for 15 years, the last 8 spent on this ship. She had joined believing in peaceful exploration and mutual cooperation among species. The galaxy had taught her different lessons. Larger, slower vessels that relied on heavy armor rather than maneuverability. All batteries engage designated targets, she ordered calmly. Point defense active. Electronic warfare, jam their communications and targeting systems. The Retribution's weapons were nothing like what the Council had seen from human ships before. For 20 years, humanity had shown the galaxy defensive capabilities only, always careful to appear non-threatening. Those days were over. Magnetic accelerator cannons fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. hitting with kinetic energy that ripped through Velcrin armor like paper. Laser batteries tracked multiple targets simultaneously, burning through sensor arrays and weapon mounts with surgical precision. Missile pods launched smart ordnance that dodged defensive fire and struck vulnerable points that should have been impossible to target. The first Velcrin destroyer died in 40 seconds. Its reactor breached by a perfectly placed railgun shot. The second survived almost a full minute before a spread of missiles overwhelmed its defenses and tore it apart. On the Velcrin flagship, chaos reigned. Their weapons couldn't track the human ship's rapid course changes. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors showed false targets mixed with real ones. Everything they tried failed. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel, the commander shouted. Someone hit that thing. But Retribution moved like a predator, like something born for this kind of violence. It wove between the Velcrin ships, using their own formation against them, forcing them to hold fire for fear of hitting each other. When the human destroyer finally took a direct hit from a plasma cannon, the Velcrin celebrated for 3 seconds before realizing their shot had barely scratched the armor. Human. Defensive technology proved as advanced as their weapons. Reactive armor-absorbed energy weapons. Point defense lasers intercepted incoming missiles. Electronic countermeasures turned enemy targeting computers into liabilities rather than assets. Do-Yan Lee worked his tactical station with hands that shook from adrenaline rather than fear. He fed targeting data to the weapons systems, watching enemy ships disintegrate under their fire. Part of him was horrified at the destruction. Another part, a deeper part that he didn't like to acknowledge, felt satisfaction at finally being able to fight back. 3 destroyers down, he reported. 2 attempting to flee. 1 still engaging. Pursuit course on the fleeing vessels, Hannah ordered. They don't get to leave. Communications, broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity no longer negotiates for what is ours. The message went out in 15 languages, ensuring every species monitoring this sector would hear it. This wasn't just about rescuing one mining crew. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. The remaining Velcrin ships died within 4 minutes of engagement start. Not one survived. Retribution had taken minimal damage, mostly superficial scoring on its outer armor. The human crew had suffered 0 casualties. Hannah ordered the rescue of the mining crew from Prosperity. Taking them aboard her destroyer, Borum Chen stood on the bridge, looking at the debris field that had been 6 Velcrin warships. You destroyed an entire battle group in 4 minutes, he said quietly. We've been ready for this fight for 10 years, Hannah replied. They just didn't know it. No one did. What happens now? Hannah looked at the star chart, where dozens of indicators showed Council fleet movements. Now they learn what we really are. The news of the engagement reached the Galactic Council within hours. Emergency sessions were called. The Velcrin Primarch demanded immediate military action against humanity. Other species called for sanctions, blockades, and peacekeeping interventions. What none of them knew was that Retribution wasn't alone. Across human-controlled space, 50 other destroyers were activating, moving to intercept points, preparing for Council response. And behind them, in hidden shipyards that the Council had never discovered, waited battlecruisers and carriers that represented 20 years of secret military development. The Council prepared to dispatch a peacekeeping fleet of 200 ships to contain human aggression. Was an overwhelming force by galactic standards. Enough to conquer most single-system civilizations, the fleet never reached human space. 3 battle groups of Terran warships intercepted them in neutral territory. And what followed wasn't a battle so much as a demonstration. Human forces didn't just win. They won while broadcasting tactical analysis on open channels, explaining each weakness in Council military doctrine, showing how every engagement was predicted and countered on Earth. Dr. Yunjinam watched the battle reports with growing unease. She had dedicated her life to peaceful cooperation, and now she was witnessing the systematic destruction of Council forces by human ships that moved and fought with terrifying efficiency. They planned this, she said to her empty office. We were trying to make peace, and our military was planning for war the entire time. But even as she said it, she understood why. The galaxy had given humanity no choice. 23 years of discrimination, of treaty violations, of systematic oppression had taught humanity a simple truth. The strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. Humans had been weak. Now they were demonstrating what happened when you gave an apex predator time to prepare. Min-Ho Kim watched the same reports from his new office in Tehran, Strategic Command. He felt no joy in the violence, but he felt no guilt either. He had tried everything else first. "Sir," his aide said carefully, "the Council is requesting negotiations." Min-Ho smiled without humor. "Tell them we'll consider their request." In 23 years? The aide hesitated. "Sir, they're desperate. They're offering immediate reparations." "Good," Min-Ho replied. "Then they can spend the next few weeks learning what desperation feels like. We spent 2 decades in that position. They can have a taste across the galaxy." Species that had laughed at human diplomatic protests were now frantically reviewing their own treaties with Earth. Looking for violations, wondering if they were next on the target list. The humans had spent 23 years teaching the Council to ignore them. Now the Council was learning a new lesson. Humanity's silence wasn't forgiveness. It was patience. And that patience had just run out. Commander Ji-Won Choi studied the tactical display aboard the frigate Persistence. Watching the Threxian heavy cruiser Dominant will accelerate away from them for the 3rd time in 4 days. The enemy ship was faster in short bursts, its engines more powerful than anything in Ji-Won's small battle group. By conventional military logic, the Threxian captain should have escaped days ago. But humans didn't follow conventional military logic. They followed something older, something written into their genetics millions of years before they built starships. "Maintain pursuit course," Ji-Won ordered. "Don't push the engines. Just keep them in sensor range." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kyungmin Beek, checked the fuel consumption rates. "Commander, we can maintain this pace for another week at least. They're burning fuel 3 times faster than we are with those acceleration bursts." "Good. Every time they run, they get a little more tired. Every time we appear behind them, they panic a little more. This is what we do." The chase had started in the Kepharon system, where the Dominant Will had been enforcing an illegal blockade against human colony transports. When Ji-Won's battle group arrived, the Threxian captain had assessed the situation, decided he was outnumbered, and ran. Smart tactical thinking by Council standards. But he didn't understand what he was running from. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on the plains of Africa, chasing prey animals for hours or even days until exhaustion made the kill easy. Humans could sweat to cool their bodies, allowing continuous exertion. Humans could pace themselves, switching between different movement speeds without losing their quarry. Most importantly, humans simply didn't quit. Not when they were tired. Not when it seemed hopeless. Not ever. Those same instincts, refined over millions of years, now expressed themselves in naval tactics that other species found incomprehensible. On the 8th day of the chase, the Threxian captain tried a new strategy. He jumped to a system with heavy sensor interference from a nearby nebula, hoping to hide long enough for repairs and refueling. Ji-Won's ships arrived 6 hours later, methodically scanning the system section by section. The hunt never stopped. "Contact," the sensor operator reported. Thermal signature consistent with Threxian cruiser hiding in the nebula's outer edge. Ji-Won didn't order an immediate attack. Instead, she positioned her ships at the system's exit points and waited. The Threxian captain had 2 choices: come out and fight, or stay hidden until his supplies ran out. Either way, humans were patient. The Dominant will emerged after 14 hours, its crew desperate and exhausted. They broadcast a surrender request on all frequencies. "Negative," Guan replied calmly. "You ran. Now finish running. We'll be right behind you." The Threxian captain's response was anguished. "We surrender. We cannot continue. Our crew is exhausted. Then you should have surrendered 8 days ago. Keep moving. The chase continued for 3 more days. The Threxian crew was working on minimal sleep, their systems failing from continuous operation without proper maintenance cycles. When they finally made another jump, their faster-than-light drive misfired, leaving them stranded in normal space while emergency repairs were attempted. Giwan's battle group arrived while the Threxian engineers were still working on the drive. The dominant will couldn't run anymore. Couldn't fight? Could barely keep life support functioning. This is Commander Giwan Choi of the Terran frigate Persistence. Power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. This time, the surrender was accepted. When Giwan walked through the Threxian ship, she saw crew members slumped at their stations, too exhausted to even stand properly. The captain looked at her with eyes that held not just defeat, but something deeper. Fear. "What are you?" he asked in broken standard. "We are faster, stronger, better armed, but you never stopped. You never even slowed down." Giwan's response would be recorded and shared across the galaxy within days. We're what happens when you corner a persistence predator for 23 years. We don't stop. We don't forgive. We don't forget. And we never, ever quit. Back on Earth, Dr. Yoonji Nam was compiling a report that nobody had asked for but everyone needed to see. She had spent 3 weeks analyzing the battles between human and council forces. And the pattern terrified her. Humans weren't winning through superior technology alone. They were winning through psychological warfare, refined over millions of years of evolution. Every battle followed the same pattern. Humans would engage, assess, and then chase. They didn't seek quick victories. They sought total psychological dominance. Council species fought until the situation became unfavorable, then retreated to fight another day. Humans fought until the enemy was incapable of fighting, then kept fighting anyway. The difference was breaking council morale across the entire galaxy. She pulled up footage from the Battle of Hellion Reach, where a single Terran destroyer had pursued 5 Velcrin cruisers for 6 straight days. The human ship had been damaged in the initial engagement, trailing atmosphere and running on backup power. Normal military doctrine said retreat. The human captain had continued the chase anyway, conducting repairs while maintaining pursuit. The Velcrin crews had surrendered just to make it stop. "We spent 20 years telling the galaxy we wanted peace," Yunji muttered. "We should have told them why we wanted peace. Because the alternative is this." Her research showed something else troubling. Human military doctrine was built on studying council law for decades, finding every legal justification for their actions. When Giwan Choi chased the dominant will for 11 days, she was enforcing council regulations about military vessels and civilian shipping lanes. When human battle groups destroyed council peacekeeping fleets, they cited council laws about proportional response to treaty violations. Humans had learned the rules. Now they were using those rules as weapons. In the Galactic Council chamber, the emergency session had been running for 6 hours. Species representatives were arguing about how to respond to human aggression. The Velcrin wanted total war. The Threxians wanted negotiation. Smaller species were staying silent, afraid to draw human attention. The Primarch finally called for order. "We must face facts. Human military capability exceeds our intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude. They have been preparing for this conflict for years, possibly decades. The question is, how do we stop them?" The Krillian ambassador, whose species specialized in strategic analysis, pulled up a holographic display showing human fleet movements over the past month. "We don't stop them, Primarch. We can't. Look at their deployment patterns. This isn't random aggression. Every human action targets a specific council violation from the past 23 years. They're working through a list. Then we destroy the list," the Velcrin Primarch declared. "They are the list," the Krillian replied. "Every human diplomat who filed complaints was also mapping our defenses. Every human merchant we overcharged was tracking our supply routes. Every human scientist we excluded from conferences was analyzing our technology. We didn't just mistreat them. We taught them how to defeat us." The chamber fell silent. The truth was settling in, heavy and unavoidable. Humanity had spent 23 years being the galaxy's punching bag while preparing for the day diplomacy failed. And when that day came, they revealed capabilities that made Council military power look primitive. Admiral Sora Kong watched the Council's emergency session through human intelligence channels. She was 73 years old, had served in the Terran Navy for HFY years, and had spent the last 20 years preparing for exactly this scenario. Her aide approached carefully. Admiral, Council forces are pulling back across all sectors. They're consolidating around their core worlds. Let them, Sora replied. We're not here to conquer. We're here to teach a lesson about respecting treaties. Damn, the lesson seems to be sinking in. We're receiving surrender offers from 17 species.
Ow.
Sora nodded. Except surrenders from species that never directly violated treaties with us. For the others, continue operations until they understand that apologies aren't enough. Reparations, formal treaties with enforcement mechanisms, and most importantly, changes to Council law that protect younger species. Her aide hesitated. Some of the captains are asking if we're taking this too far. The Battle of Sigma Station resulted in heavy Council casualties. Too far? Sora's voice went cold. They denied medical supplies to a human colony experiencing a plague outbreak. 7,000 people died while our diplomats begged for help. The Council voted against intervention because treating humans equally would set a bad precedent. You tell those captains that we're not going far enough. She turned back to the tactical display where red icons showed Council defensive positions. Every species in this galaxy needs to learn something fundamental about humans. We prefer peace. We genuinely want cooperation and mutual prosperity. But if you force us to choose war, we're very, very good at it. Better than anyone else in the galaxy, because we evolved for this. The aide stood straighter. Yes, Admiral. Continuing operations as planned. As news of human victories spread, something unexpected happened. Younger species that had suffered under Council discrimination began requesting contact with Earth. They wanted treaties, protection. Some even wanted military alliances. Minho Kim, now Director of Strategic Operations, found himself in diplomatic meetings again, but from a very different position. The species reaching out weren't looking down at humanity anymore. They were looking up with hope. We can make the galaxy better, he told his staff after one such meeting. That's what this was always about. Not revenge. Justice. In a future where strength is used to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. But first, the Council needed to learn its lesson completely. And humans, as Juan Choi had explained so perfectly, never stopped until the lesson was learned. The broadcast began at exactly midnight. Galactic Standard Time, ensuring maximum viewership across all Council systems. Every communication relay, every news network, every public display screen received the transmission simultaneously. The image showed Minho Kim sitting at a simple desk, with the Earth visible through a window behind him. He wore the same plain black suit he had worn to his final Council appearance, but now his title read, Director Terran Strategic Operations. My name's Minho Kim, he began. 3 months ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and explained that humanity was withdrawing from diplomatic relations. Many of you believed we were making an empty threat, that we would come back with more complaints and pleas within weeks. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what humanity has been doing for the past 23 years while you laughed at our diplomatic protests. The image shifted to classified footage dated 15 years earlier. It showed Terran naval exercises in deep space, far from any Council monitoring. The ships moved with tactical precision that matched what Council forces were now experiencing in combat. The weapons fired with accuracy that shouldn't have been possible with technology Earth had supposedly developed only recently. This is Destroyer Group 7. Conducting war games in 2010, Minho continued. Note the magnetic accelerator cannons, the electronic warfare suites, the point defense systems. The same technology that is currently defeating Council fleets. We had these capabilities 15 years ago. We just didn't tell you. More footage followed. Human intelligence officers in civilian clothes, attending Council academic conferences, cultural exchanges, and trade negotiations. The video showed them scanning military installations, recording fleet movements, and collecting data on Council defensive systems. Every diplomat you condescended to was also a military intelligence analyst, Minho said. Every merchant you overcharged was mapping your logistics networks. Every scientist you excluded from your universities was studying your technology for weaknesses. We spent 23 years trying to be your friends. You spent 23 years teaching us how to be your enemies. We were excellent students in the council chamber. Delegates watched in growing horror as Minho systematically revealed the depth of human preparation. He showed intelligence reports on council military capabilities dating back to decades. He displayed tactical assessments that predicted council responses to human aggression with devastating accuracy. He revealed that every major council military installation had been mapped, studied, and assigned to specific human strike groups years before the first shot was fired. You mistook our patience for weakness, Minho continued. You confused our preference for diplomacy with inability to wage war. This was your critical error. Humans spent 23 years hoping you would choose justice. You chose exploitation instead. So now you face the consequences. The broadcast shifted again, this time showing Admiral Sora Kong at her command center. The elderly woman looked directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. I am Admiral Sora Kong, Supreme Commander of Terran Fleet Operations. I was a junior officer when humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel. I watched my government approach the Galactic Council with hope and optimism. Believing we had joined a community of civilized species, instead, we found systematic discrimination that would have broken a lesser species. She gestured to a tactical display behind her. But humanity does not break. We adapt. We endure. We overcome. For 23 years, while you violated treaties and laughed at our protests, we were building this. The display showed the full extent of Terran military deployment. Ships that the Council had never seen, weapons platforms in hidden asteroid bases, defense networks protecting every human world. The scale was staggering. Humanity had built a war machine that rivaled the combined might of the Council's 5 most powerful species. Every species in the galaxy fights until they can't anymore, Admiral Sora said quietly. Humans fight until you can't anymore. That is the difference. That is why you are losing. Captain Hannah Park appeared next, speaking from the Bridge of Retribution. Behind her, crew members worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. I am Captain Hannah Park. 3 months ago, my ship destroyed a Velcrin battle group in 4 minutes. The Council called it a surprise attack. It wasn't. It was the result of 8 years of training specifically to counter Velcrin tactics. We knew your ship designs, your crew rotation schedules, your tactical doctrines, your weaknesses. We knew everything because you never bothered to hide anything from species you considered inferior. More captains appeared, each explaining how their victories weren't luck or surprise, but careful planning based on intelligence gathered over decades. Commander Giwan Choi described how human persistence, hunting instincts translated into naval pursuit tactics. Captain Insu Park detailed how human forces used Council military law against its creators. Every statement was backed by footage, by data, by undeniable evidence of systematic preparation. The broadcast continued for 2 hours, revealing layer after layer of human strategic planning. It showed the network of intelligence officers who had infiltrated Council society, the scientists who had deliberately hidden their most advanced research, the military planners who had wargamed every possible conflict scenario, the diplomats who had endured humiliation while gathering the information that would later enable victory. Dr. Yoonji Nam appeared toward the end, her expression sad but determined. I am Dr. Yoonji Nam, xenobiologist and cultural liaison. I spent 20 years advocating for peaceful coexistence. I believed that understanding and patience would eventually earn humanity a place in galactic civilization. I was wrong. The Council only understands power. So humanity showed them power. But unlike the Council, we're using that power to build something better. The final segment showed classified Council session. Recordings where delegates had discussed how to handle the human problem. Contempt in their voices was clear. The casual racism, was undeniable. One Threxian official suggested simply blockading human space. Until they learned their place, administrator proposed charging humans a civilization tax for the privilege of interstellar travel. Minho appeared again, his expressio, and carefully neutral as the damning recordings played. You see what humanity faced? 23 years of this. Every day, every negotiation, every interaction, you treated us as inferior, not because of anything we did, but because we were young. Now you are learning what young species become when you give them 23 years to prepare for war. The broadcast showed one final piece of footage, the coalition armada that the Council had assembled to contain human aggression. 17 species had contributed ships, creating the largest military force in galactic history. The footage showed this massive fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel, confident and powerful. Then it showed what happened next. Human battle groups appeared from multiple vectors, their formation precise and their intent unmistakable. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a systematic dismantling of Council power, conducted while human ships broadcast tactical analysis on open channels. We could have destroyed that fleet completely, Admiral Sora's voice narrated over the footage. Instead, we disabled their ships and let them retreat. Not because we feared them, but because we wanted you to understand something crucial. Humanity seeks justice, not genocide. We want reparations, not conquest. We want equality, not domination. The image returned to Minho at his desk. The Galactic Council is welcome to request negotiations at any time. But understand this, we will never again accept being treated as lesser species. We will never again tolerate treaty violations. We will never again wait patiently while you debate whether we deserve basic rights. The galaxy has changed. Humanity changed it. You can adapt to this new reality, or you can be swept aside by it. The choice is yours. The broadcast ended. For several minutes, no one in the council chamber spoke. The full scope of what humanity had done was overwhelming. For 23 years, an entire species had been playing a game within a game, appearing weak while growing strong, appearing helpless while gathering the tools for victory. The Velcrin Primarch finally broke the silence. They were planning this from the beginning. Everything they did, every protest filed, every treaty signed, was part of a strategy to defeat us. The Krillian ambassador said quietly, "That's not what the broadcast showed. They were hoping we would choose justice. They were prepared for us to choose exploitation. We chose exploitation, so we faced the consequences of that choice." The Threxian High Speaker, who had laughed at Minho's warnings 3 months ago, looked physically ill. How do we negotiate with them now? After seeing that they know everything about us, after realizing they've been preparing for this fight longer than some of our crew members have been alive, we negotiate from a position of weakness, the Krillian replied. Because that's what we are now. Weak. And we hope they treat us better than we treated them. On Earth, reaction to the broadcast was complicated. Some humans celebrated the revelation of their species' strength. Others worried about what it said about human nature, that they could smile diplomatically while planning for war, Dr. Yunji. Nam addressed a press conference at her university. What humanity did was not duplicitous. It was necessary. We tried genuine peace first. For years we tried. Only when that failed completely did military preparation become the priority. The Council forced this choice. They forced it by making peace impossible. A reporter asked the question everyone was thinking, are humans the villains of this story? Yunji considered carefully before responding. No, but we're not pure heroes either. We're a species that wanted to join galactic civilization peacefully, got systematically exploited for 23 years, and then hit back hard enough to change the galaxy forever. Whether that makes us heroes or villains depends on what we do next. Minho Kim was asking himself the same question as he prepared for the negotiations he knew were coming. Humanity had won the war. Now they had to win the peace. And that meant building a galaxy where strength protected the weak, instead of exploiting them. It was what they had wanted from the beginning. Now they had the power to make it happen. For months after humanity ended diplomacy, Minho Kim walked into the Grand Assembly chamber again. The room looked different now. Half the seats sat empty, abandoned by species that had withdrawn from the council rather than be associated with the organization that had provoked human wrath. The remaining delegates watched him with expressions ranging from fear to resignation. No one laughed this time. The seating arrangement had changed too. The elevated platforms where the most powerful species once sat were now at the same level as everyone else. And at the head of the chamber, where the council primarch traditionally presided, sat a simple chair marked with Earth's flag. It was empty, but its message was clear. Humanity would no longer be petitioners. They would be equals, or there would be no council at all. Minna took his position at the central platform, the same spot where he had delivered his final warning. He placed a data crystal on the pedestal, just as he had done 4 months ago. But the crystal's contents were very different this time. The Terran Federation acknowledges the Council's request for negotiations. He began, his voice carrying the same calm authority it always had. We have reviewed your preliminary offers and found them inadequate. Today, I will present our complete terms. These terms are not negotiable. You will accept them in full, or hostilities will resume. The Velkran Primarch, looking smaller somehow despite his massive frame, nodded weakly. We understand. Present your terms. Minho activated the display. First, full reparations for 23 years of treaty violations. The total sum is calculated based on economic damages, loss of life, and punitive damages for willful discrimination. Payment schedules will account for each species' economic capacity, but all debts will be paid in full within 20 standard years. The number that appeared made several delegates gasp. It was enormous. But more importantly, it was documented. Every credit justified by specific incidents, legal precedents from council law, and calculations verified by neutral third parties. Second, formal apologies from every species that participated in discriminatory practices against humanity. These apologies will be public, specific, and acknowledge the harm caused. Apologies that appear insincere or attempt to minimize culpability will be rejected. Third, immediate release of all human prisoners held by council members, with transportation provided to human territory at council expense. Additionally, human families separated by discriminatory citizenship laws will be reunited, with full rights granted to all individuals involved. Fourth, restructuring of council law to ensure equal treatment for all species, regardless of age or technological development. The principle that older civilizations deserve preferential treatment will be abolished. All species, from the newest to the oldest, will have equal voice and equal protection under law. The chamber remained silent. These terms were harsh, but not cruel. Expensive, but not impossible. Most importantly, they were exactly what humanity had asked for 23 years ago through diplomatic channels. The council had refused then. Now they had no choice but to accept. But Minho wasn't finished. Fifth, establishment of a protection treaty for younger species. Any civilization achieving faster than light travel will automatically receive a transition period during which they cannot be exploited, discriminated against, or excluded from galactic institutions. The Terran Federation will enforce this treaty personally if necessary. This was the most important clause, the one that transformed human victory from revenge into something greater. Humanity wasn't just securing its own position, it was changing the system that had oppressed them. The Krillian ambassador raised a tentacle hesitantly. Director Kim, this fifth term effectively makes humanity the protector of all emerging species. It gives you authority to intervene in council affairs indefinitely. Yes, Minho replied simply, because we learned a lesson that cost us dearly. Systems of power protect themselves, not the powerless. If we don't enforce these protections, you'll eventually return to your old ways. This is insurance against your nature. You're making yourselves the galaxy's police force, the Threxian High Speaker said. Though without the condescension his predecessor would have used. How do we know you won't abuse that power? Minho's expression softened slightly. You don't. You'll have to trust us, just as we had to trust you 23 years ago. The difference is that we actually tried to be fair. We actually honored our treaties. We actually meant it when we said we wanted peace. Now you'll get the chance to prove whether you mean it too. The vote to accept human terms was unanimous. It had to be. The alternative was continuation of a war they were losing badly. Captain Hannah Park stood in the shipyard at Mars Station, watching the Retribution undergo decommissioning. Her ship had started the shooting war, and now that war was ending. The destroyer would be preserved as a museum ship, a reminder of what happened when humanity's patience ended. Her crew gathered around her, many of them looking at the ship with mixed emotions. They had done their duty. They had won, but the cost was high, even for the victors. Captain Do-Yan Lee said quietly, "Do you think we did the right thing?"